At the beginning of the 1990s, there was a wave of feature-length reboots, remakes, and adaptations based on properties from decades past. And Steven Spielberg's production company, Amblin Entertainment, was responsible for several of them, including the subject of today's video, 1995's Casper.
Hi, I'm Casper!
After spending decades on the printed page and TV screens in cartoon form, Spielberg's resources allowed for Casper the Friendly Ghost to be placed in a live-action setting for the very first time. Although the movie didn't exactly receive universal acclaim, Casper had a solid run in theaters that spanned the entire summer of 1995. That success was made possible by one of the most aggressive marketing campaigns of the 90s, with a bold promise that you just had to see it to believe it. And the marketing was one thing, but the promotional tie-ins and merchandising were another beast entirely. We're talking toys, clothes, coloring books, trading cards, console games, handheld games, a Tiger Electronics handheld game, Pepsi products, toys at Pizza Hut, the Comfort Inn Ghost Hunt sweepstakes, attractions at Universal Parks, and last but not least, home decor, including this horrifying candelabra that haunts my nightmares to this very day. In today's episode, we'll be looking back on the making of Casper, from the original director's darker vision of the movie, to the canceled sequel that never saw the light of day, and everything in between.
Universal Pictures and Amblin Entertainment present
Casper, no, wall, human!
Casper.
Sorry.
Rated PG. Haunting season begins Friday at theaters everywhere.
Through his role as executive producer on Animaniacs and Tiny Toons Adventures, Steven Spielberg was exposed to a pair of talented writers who worked on both shows, Sherry Stoner and Deanna Oliver. In 1993, just as finishing touches were being done on Jurassic Park, Steven turned to them to write the screenplay for a live-action Casper movie he was set to produce.
Casper simply came to be out of the fond and collective memories of everyone who remembers the cartoon.
Until I started working on this episode, I had no idea just how big of an impact these individuals had on kids who grew up in the 90s. I loved Tiny Toons and Animaniacs, but Deanna was also the voice actor for the Toaster character in all three Brave Little Toaster movies. Meanwhile, Sherry both created and voiced fan-favorite Animaniacs character Slappy Squirrel, the grouchy but lovable cartoon veteran with a strong New York accent.
Thank you, Mr. Exposition.
On top of that, she was the live-action reference for Ariel and Belle in The Little Mermaid and The Beauty and the Beast, respectively. Much like their approach to writing segments for Animaniacs and Tiny Toons, Spielberg wanted the duo to incorporate topical gags and references to other properties into the movie as much as possible.
Come with me if you want to live.
Come with me if you want to live.
But beneath the humor, there's an extremely sad plotline about a kid who died from pneumonia after playing outside in the snow for too long and never crossed over into the afterlife because he didn't want his father to be lonely.
What a sweetheart.
For Casper, Spielberg had to find a director who could handle the delicate balance between humor and heartstring pulling. And on top of that, someone who could direct a movie whose main character would be entirely computer generated.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
His first choice was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles director Steve Barron, but he turned Spielberg's offer down, a decision he has since admitted he deeply regrets.
Damn!
After the tragic circumstances surrounding Brandon Lee's death on the set of 1994's The Crow, director Alex Proyas was looking for his next project to be something a bit more lighthearted. And in mid-1993, while The Crow was still in post-production, Spielberg approached him to direct Casper. Alex signed on, viewing the project as an opportunity to do a really great kids film with some solid emotional resonance. Unfortunately, he wasn't on board for long. As the film's original script continued to receive additional revisions, Alex felt that the project started to move away from its potential at some point, and that's the reason that he politely bowed out. News of his exit broke on November 28, 1993, just 2 months before cameras were set to roll in the movie. Luckily, Spielberg already had a replacement in mind.
The director that we had on the film left the project, and I called Brad. He was my next phone call.
I said, you had to have called the wrong Brad. You sure which Brad you called? He said, I know exactly who I called.
At that point, Brad Silberling was a TV director with no feature-length movies under his belt. On top of that, he had no experience working on anything with visual effects. But Spielberg was impressed with his work and felt confident that he could pull this movie off. And I mean, look at that majestic-ass hair. If your director looks like the lead singer of the band Slaughter, you know he's gonna kill it behind the camera.
It's the most awful job in the world, being a director. It's the worst job in the world. Horrible. You have no social life. You can't even get a pee. Ask him when he last had a chance for a pee. Poo, forget it. Number twos, last week.
By the time Brad signed on to direct, several pieces of Casper had already been set into motion. Even after stepping away from the movie, Alex Proyas' lasting contribution was the idea to give Whipstaff Manor a unique look.
It's not so bad, huh?
You're Stephen King.
Instead of going with a typical 19th century Victorian design, seen in movies like Psycho and Beetlejuice, legendary art director and production designer Les Stilley suggested that the look of the manor be inspired by Barcelona's Casa Batlló. I definitely did not need to Google how to pronounce that, by the way.
Going back to the original Casper cartoons, that was actually the style, the art direction that was in the animation.
The film opens up with two boys who were dared to sneak into Whipstaff Manor and need to take a picture to prove they were there.
Just shut up and take the picture. You take the picture. Guys, don't fight. I'll take the picture. Say cheese.
Shout out to Squints from The Sandlot, I can't forget him, but this kid on the right has the funniest expression that still makes me laugh as hard today as it did when I was a child. This opening was just such a perfect way to establish the tone of the movie, while also giving the kids something to be wowed by before moving on to what might be seen as one of the more boring moments in the film.
To the Save the Pumas Foundation, $1.2 million.
But this scene introduces us to the main villain of the movie, Carrigan Crittenden.
The maniacal, insufferable Carrigan Crittenden.
I love Carrigan. I think she's a wonderful character.
I thought she was lovely. I don't see why everybody thinks she's so mean.
Oh, she's a bit like Margaret Thatcher.
She's a little opinionated, that's all.
Along with her attorney, sidekick, lackey, boyfriend, he's just Dibs.
And this is Dibs.
Hello.
He introduces himself as a
Close personal friend.
and has a dopey, surprised expression after getting a kiss from Carrigan later in the movie, so we can only assume that this is a bit of a one-sided relationship. Seriously though, shout out to the casting director for pairing up Cathy Moriarty and Eric Idle.
What's it like working with Casper?
It's just,
He's not there.
he's not there.
No, not really there. Apparently he's having a torrid affair. That's what I hear. The trailer's bouncing around an awful lot for a ghost.
In this scene, Ben Stein informs Carrigan that her recently deceased father left her with Whipstaff Manor, which Carrigan snobbishly refers to as a lousy piece of property.
No, it was lousy 50 years ago. Now it's condemned.
Even as a 4-year-old kid with a Dunkaroo and a cheese puff in his head instead of a functioning brain, I thought the mansion in this movie was one of the coolest looking places I'd ever seen. In the behind the scenes footage, it's shown that a good chunk of the exterior was constructed within a soundstage on the Universal lot, and the interiors were then assembled on a second soundstage. Also, where most film and TV sets don't have a ceiling because it's often kept out of frame, the production team on Casper had to construct the set from top to bottom because the camera would pan upwards for some of the shots where ghosts were flying around the mansion.
This is the most incredible set I've ever been on in all the movies I've ever done.
After the mansion paperwork is thrown into a fireplace, Dibs discovers a secret message regarding hidden treasure, which gives Carrigan a sudden change of priorities.
I knew that place was worth something. There's treasure in that house.
But when they arrive, they're greeted by Casper and the ghostly trio. Carrigan calls upon two individuals to rid the mansion of its specter problem, both carrying ties to Saturday Night Live. The first is Father Guido Sarducci, played by Don Novello.
It's no problem. It's like no problem whatsoever.
As a child in the mid-90s, I was not aware of this character at all, but that doesn't mean he didn't make me crack up.
Piece of cake, piece of crumb cake.
After the ghostly trio twists up Father Guido's neck like a rolled gold pretzel, Carrigan and Dibs call in the big guns. Well, actually the big proton pack.
Who you gonna call? Someone else.
The nerds over at the Ghostbusters fandom page consider this cameo appearance a cowardly portrayal of Ray Stantz, and therefore don't consider it to be canon. To that I say, touch grass, but also, he went in alone, armed with just a proton pack and seemingly no ghost traps. So he was simply under-equipped for the job, not a coward.
Ungrateful little yuppie larva. After all we did for this city.
But Carrigan, at her wit's end with the mansion's ghost problem, brings in a construction crew that unsuccessfully tries to knock the whole thing down. The visual gag that caps this scene off is one of the best in the movie.
Dibs, do something!
After breaking the fourth wall by flipping past an episode of his own cartoon, we're introduced to a ghost shrink by the name of Dr. Harvey. Several actors, including Robin Williams and Kurt Russell, were considered for this part, and they're two of my favorites. Both of them would have killed it, but Bill Pullman was just absolutely perfect for this role.
It's your house. You're haunting it. Possession is 9/10 of the law.
Dr. Harvey turned away from human psychiatry after his wife passed away, and now spends his life traveling the country in search of scared or depressed spirits that need help crossing over into the afterlife, with an emphasis on helping the spirits resolve unfinished business. Much to the chagrin of his daughter Kat, who constantly changes schools while accompanying her father on the road. Back in the 90s, if you needed an actress who could play a sarcastic goth, or at least a goth-adjacent sarcastic girl, and Winona Ryder wasn't available, Christina Ricci was the second name on the list. After seeing her on TV and quickly experiencing one of the worst recorded cases of down bad-itis in history, Casper uses his ghostly powers to possess Carrigan's hotel TV, influencing her to contact Dr. Harvey to hire his services for Whipstaff.
It's her. She's here. She's in my house. I did it.
As they get settled into the mansion, Casper somehow manages to remain a lovable, funny little guy, even while displaying extremely creepy tendencies. Homeboy literally turns himself into a pillow to get closer to his crush. But when Dr. Harvey finally comes face to face with Casper, we're shown exactly why Bill Pullman was cast in this movie. Forget the Wilhelm scream. This is the greatest scream in cinema history. After returning from a night out at the horse racing track, the ghostly trio, who we now know by their legal names of Stretch, Fatso, and Stinkie, spend the next 5 minutes terrorizing Dr. Harvey in what might be one of the best segments in the movie.
Who do you think you are defiling our domicile, huh? Dr. James! Hey, your therapist.
Bill Pullman revealed that these scenes took 3 full days to shoot, and the amount of pressure on him and the crew to get it right was massively high.
And if I didn't do it right, if I moved it through something where a ghost was supposed to be, it was $100,000. This is what Spielberg said, be very careful, Bill, because you could bankrupt us.
Most film productions use tennis balls as a stand-in, specifically to give actors somewhere to focus their eyes in a scene where a CG character will be added later on. But the crew on Casper took a slightly different approach. Instead of tennis balls, they used foam maquettes modeled after the ghosts in the movie. When shooting a scene, they'd do one take with the actor interacting with the foam maquettes, and another where they interacted with nothing. And the actor had to do their best to remember how they interacted with those foam ghosts in the take they just did. The visual effects team at Industrial Lights and Magic would then render the ghosts over that second take, using the first take with foam maquettes as a template of where to insert their effects. On top of that, they literally had the director of Fievel Goes West and We're Back, A Dinosaur Story on set, sitting at a computer, drawing ghosts over the footage that was just recorded, which gave the 3D effects artists an even better idea of where to put the characters.
The process is usually called an animatic, but we laughingly call it a Caspermatic, which I guess makes me a Caspermator.
Before all of the plunger fighting and vacuum sucking, the ghostly trio jumps into Dr. Harvey's body, setting up one of the most beloved moments in this film. As he's splashing water on his face, Dr. Harvey transforms into Clint Eastwood, Rodney Dangerfield, Mel Gibson, and the Crypt Keeper. I recently realized that this part is very similar to the mirror scene in Poltergeist, except this one didn't traumatize children all over the world. But this was one of many scenes that was improved during punch-up sessions that Spielberg held just weeks before shooting began on Casper, and they almost gave Mike Ditka a cameo instead of Rodney Dangerfield. By the time production started, the original script was revised 11 times, with even more revisions made while the film was being shot. I don't know which revision killed Alex Proyas' interest in directing the movie. He probably wanted this movie to be much darker in tone with a lot less slapstick. As much as I love this movie just as it was made, the Crow fan in me would have been really curious to see Alex's take on this movie. But once the uncles are added into the mix, the movie's tone takes a whole new shape.
You guys are disgusting, obnoxious creeps.
Thank you.
They were played by Joe Napoli,
Yes again, phone bag.
who was handpicked by Spielberg because of his performance in the NBC series Viper, a pre-Everybody Loves Raymond Brad Garrett, and Joe Alaskey,
Smellogram.
who had already worked with Deanna and Sherry as the voice actor for Plucky Duck on Tiny Toons.
When in doubt, stall.
And on an unrelated note, voiced Grandpa Lou Pickles on Rugrats. What a f***ing legend. I probably don't need to tell you that their actual faces were used as reference points when designing the look of the ghostly trio. Like, come on. But Brad Silberling smartly kept all of the voice acting cast on set but out of sight, delivering their lines and interacting with the live action cast off camera while shooting was going on. Apparently about 70% of their dialogue was ad-libbed. One line that I didn't really appreciate as a kid but had me cracking up during my recent rewatch was completely improv by Joe Alaskey.
Oh, scream or sugar?
And I can't in good conscience upload this episode without mentioning the doorway scene. Dr. Harvey thinking he's about to see the spirit of his deceased wife, but instead being greeted by a voluptuous, gussied up Fatso is just an all-timer.
My man!
For the remainder of the movie, there are basically 3 major plot points to follow. Casper's attempt at wooing Cat, while she's too busy trying to woo the kid from the Mighty Ducks with a dope Halloween party, Dr. Harvey's mission in trying to get the uncles to cross over to the other side, and Carrigan's scheme of trying to sneak away with whatever treasure is hidden in the mansion. All of these plot lines culminate in a scene where Casper rediscovers a machine his father invented called the Lazarus, designed to bring the dead back to life using some sort of liquid that Casper describes as an instant primordial soup mix. So who's gonna tell him that it's just Tropical Punch? But right before this scene, they showed one of the coolest fictional inventions in film history, the Up and Atom machine, which it turns out Eric Idle didn't have a very fun time with.
Then we were going through the Up and Atom machine, and we have to scream. So we're screaming, and they shot the shaving cream at the wrong time, and it went down his front. That was so funny.
It was really funny.
And then you got sick from
That's
it.
how I made her laugh. By being ill, beaten up, and sick.
As the ghostly trio spends the night out at a local bar with Dr. Harvey, they come to the realization that he'd make the perfect 4th member of their ghostly crew. So while he's sauced and tossed, they attempt to murder him in a number of ways. After they have a change of heart, he of course ends up accidentally falling into a hole. Carrigan, overhearing Casper explain how the Lazarus Machine works, decides to murder Dibs so he can fly through the walls of the mansion and steal the treasure she's looking for.
If you were a ghost.
If you were.
But she ends up falling off a cliff while trying to turn him into roadkill with her Land Rover. The ghost of Carrigan returns to claim her treasure, but Dibs, who she hilariously refers to as a flaccid little worm, has other ideas.
And baby, you're 6 feet under.
Eric Idle's monologue about his dream mansion will always be one of my favorite moments in this movie.
And a little dog called Carrigan, a bitch just like you.
Although apparently he doesn't even remember shooting Casper.
It's a special effects film, so there's hours of waiting around, which you remember more than the actual acting bits. But I don't remember very much about the movie at all, actually.
After Carrigan boots Dibs out of a window, seemingly into the Atlantic Ocean where he died instantly, seriously, he never comes back, she's questioned about any unfinished business she might have, vanishing into the afterlife after admitting that she has none. After all that, it's revealed that Casper's treasure was just a glove and an autographed baseball.
It's autographed by Duke Snider, the Brooklyn Dodgers.
I mean, hey, Carrigan probably could have pawned that off for some big bucks, right? Ooh. Well, R.I.P. But just as Kat readies the Lazarus to bring Casper back to life, her father reveals his new ghostly form. Did they actually kill Bill Pullman and revive him after the movie was done? Because the likeness is uncanny. Her father is successfully revived, and hey, after seeing a ghost explode into the ether, a guy get booted out of a glass window to his death, and coming face to face with the ghost of your dead dad, push all that trauma aside and go have fun at your Halloween party. During all of this, Casper retreats to the attic to play with his ball, when the spirit of Kat's mom suddenly emerges and offers to revive him for just one night. I'll probably receive death threats for saying this, but even when I was a kid, I didn't really like this last scene for how schmaltzy it is.
Can I keep you?
But Devon Sawa credits this movie for helping to establish his career, even more so than his first film role in The Little Giants, a certified classic, by the way. Devon also revealed that this scene was actually based on an alternate ending written by a young J.J. Abrams. And originally, Casper didn't repeat the line that he spoke earlier in the movie, but rather, "I'm gonna keep you." Good call on changing the line because that is somehow way creepier. But seeing as Casper took credit for being the very first movie with a fully computer-generated lead character, beating out Toy Story by just under 6 months, it should come as no surprise that the visual effects phase of this movie took a damn long time, about 1 year.
We literally just finished this film a week ago, so it has yet to sink in that we're actually done.
In the post-production phase, James Horner added what is undoubtedly one of the best original scores featured in a family movie. Casper's Lullaby, amazing. If you drop that piano medley down a few octaves, you've essentially got the intro to a Typo Negative song.
In her place, 100 candles burning.
But in post, a lot of scenes were cut that have never been released to the public. One of them was documented in a behind-the-scenes featurette and involved a stuntman fitted with a life mask that made it look like Bill Pullman was being shot into water on an office chair. Did they just reuse the Crispin Glover mask from Back to the Future 2? That thing is horrifying. Otherwise, Spielberg filmed a cameo for the mirror scene, but knew even on that day that it wasn't going to be in the movie. He just did it for fun. But the one I really wish had been kept in was a gag involving Zelda Rubinstein reprising her role from Poltergeist. Apparently, she was shot out of a chimney by the ghostly trio while attempting to clear them from the mansion. There are no pictures or video of that cameo, but as a fan of both movies, I'd love to see that resurface one day. After Casper's successful theatrical run, Universal adapted the live-action movie into a Saturday morning cartoon that aired on Fox Kids. And because it was created by Sherry Stoner and Deanna Oliver, this show was extremely faithful to the tone of the movie, and even featured every one of the voice actors involved with the film.
Easy peasy, bald head.
Talks of a direct sequel didn't happen until 2000, when it was reported that Simon Wells, great-grandson of H.G. Wells and frequent Spielberg collaborator, had written a script that Universal decided not to move forward with. The studio realized that the budget would be too high, and they weren't confident that the movie would be profitable, based solely on the fact that every direct-to-home video Casper movie failed to meet their expectations financially. But also, Christina Ricci had moved on from projects aimed at a younger audience, so without her, a sequel didn't make much sense. As for the future of everyone's favorite Bulbhead, a live-action TV series was announced back in 2022, but NBC has been radio silent on that for over 2 years. Before we go, I just wanted to thank anyone who joined the new channel membership I launched with my previous episode. If you'd like to join as well, just click the link in the pinned comment down below. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.